I'm back. Oh, not right now. I'd like to thank Pat McKay for being here, being a good sport, always. Where the heck was I? Oh. So, what does every attraction, show, or experience have in common? Not necessarily technology, not necessarily architecture. Some don't even have a story. But they do have a place to buy a souvenir. So you can take home the memory of your cherished experience. We are privileged to have Johnnie Rush of the McBride Group here to show us why retail is an essential ingredient. Give him a hand.
Hi, everybody.
Let's see, where's the clicker? There it is. So when JP asked me to talk about retail, which has been about 30 years of my career, rather than do the typical presentation you've either seen or given, which a lot of you have done before, on cool retail concepts or cool things in the retail industry, he said, let's do something a little more challenging because this is a thought process. You guys are creative leaders. So what I wanted to focus on today was not what we're designing, not how we're designing it, not even where we're designing it, but really why we're designing it, because that's the question right now. Retail is in this huge upheaval, and it's caused by this pace of global change that's being driven by the economy. So when you look at the past, let's say till 1980s, we've lived in these various cyclical degrees of consumerism that were the era of indulgence till about 2007. Then we had the recession mindset, the era of consequences. Right now we live in something called the era of accountability. And all consumer spending behavior is driven by these attributes that are causing all of these cottage industries and this turmoil in retail, because you see stores shutting down all the time. Caution, self-reliance, connectedness, satisfaction, and the biggest one, treasure hunting, which is people who will go to any length to get what they want, be personalized, customized, or specific to them. It has its roots in a trends in technology timeline that really looks at the next 50 years. But if you kind of focus right on the middle and you blow that up a little bit, all of these mega trends that we all experience as consumers, personalization, volatility, digitalization, the overabundance and the increasing impact that technology has on our lives and our habits, and you look at some really key things that are not future projections, these are what's happening right now. Increased longevity, home as a refuge, mobile payments, basic forms of artificial intelligence, freetailing, and two of the most important ones, conspicuous non-consumption and life story labeling, the why behind what I'm buying. And this is key, this is a setup, because the last singularity we had as a species was the invention of the transistor. So I'm showing a picture of an iPhone here. It's not the iPhone. It's the fact that we invented something that changed the course of human history. We're poised for the next singularity. It's going to happen within the next 10 years. But the transistor was the first one. What it did in 100 years was advance us as a species more than the past million years have. We haven't adapted as a species with enough maturity to be able to handle the capability of things we're inventing right now. And it's causing a real problem because people shop, they buy based on habits or what they see other people buying. What we call it is acceleration and this expectation of immediacy. And I'm not too ashamed to admit that I remember my first cell phone, okay? Some of you young folks don't in here, but I remember at Marriott Corporation, this is what they handed me, which was actually attached to a car phone battery, and you carried it around. When I graduated high school, everything on this Radio Shack ad right now can be done on your iPhone. Okay, the fact that I'm living through that we all are, is incredible. But we don't see it and we don't react to it because we experience it every day. It becomes part of the mundane. What it's caused is us as human beings to change our habits from a 10-minute decision factor to now less than 90 seconds. And it's actually 13 seconds to actually make a qualified decision based on what other people like. And that's kind of key, because when we get into the why are we designing, what are we designing for, you have to look at the culture and the world we live in now, where this expectation of immediacy is not something that's negotiable. It's something that is on demand, and companies that don't have it will fall to the wayside, making room for new companies that cater to this sense of immediacy. Personalization and customization are another ones. When you look at retail in general, everyone thinks of Amazon. Amazon is not a retailer. Amazon is the most fabulous distribution company in the world. They don't cater to what traditional retailers cater to because they don't have to. They know that if they get it to you fast and with a breadth of selection, price is somewhat negotiable. When you couple that with what's happening in the world, so it's happening with all of you in here, it's happening with your children, with your friends, the idea that social media is influencing us to such a degree is a very, very scary thing, because no one really knows how to deal with it. And being the father of 3 daughters, my oldest is 30, my youngest is 15, I have trouble with all of them on technology, especially the 15-year-old, because so much of her life is driven by what other people are doing, or what the newest makeup releases from the Kardashians, or things that are so important to her, not because she finds value in them, but because other people find value in them. And that's why I'm showing you this, is because now when you think of retailing, and this doesn't matter if it's entertainment retailing or a theme park or a traditional retailing, personal value now is defined this way. The inner circle, the entertainment value, the monetary value, the utility value, the actual usefulness of it, and the knowledge value. And all of that creates something that's more valuable than the item, and that's the feeling of significance. That feeling of significance is driving the spending behavior of every consumer worldwide. Doesn't matter what age, what demographic, what income value. That creates a sense of belonging, and as human beings, we crave this sense of belonging. So when you look at everything that we've talked about the past couple of days, when it comes to landscape design, environmental design, the value of storytelling, all that comes down to significance. And the big change is that significance right now is not a tangible item. It used to be. It's not anymore. The 3 things that every consumer covets now are information, validation, and affirmation. And affirmation is probably the driving force behind spending behaviors now. Not buying something because you necessarily like it, but because so many other people like it, or someone told you to buy it, or you're going to feel like you don't belong, that's the key word, because you don't have it. Okay, that's crazy to live in a society, but that's what's driving our spending behavior now. When you look at retail now and retail 2020, most retailers believe that a yet unknown technology will be a driving force in this market for years to come. Right now, 38% believe first-generation consumers in emerging markets are going to be another driving force. And that's true, because as the world gets smaller because of technology, it starts to shrink, communication becomes instantaneous. It really doesn't matter where you are or where an item is or an experience, you can get there somehow. The scary thing is the experience technology cycle to make that better, faster, cheaper, that's driven by a consumer demand and this insatiable appetite to always have the best thing out there is going to cause a problem. And it's going to create some things that you've already seen. This whole prosumers market is huge. The idea that through firstism, I'm the first one to have an item, or I supported a Kickstarter project that got me something that no one else has. And that's the treasure hunting. I have it and very few other people have it. So I can post it now and I have the bragging rights, which has more value to me in terms of feeling of significance than the actual item itself. That's crazy, right? I mean, that's the world we live in today. And when you look at what was important in the past and what's important now, all items, price, quality, speed, or exclusivity, which used to be the benchmarks for value, are now driven around emotion and engagement, entertainment, share of time. Share of time is the new currency. That's just a fact of life, and it's only going to get more accelerated as technology becomes more accessible. When we talk about storytelling, and the past 2 days have always been about storytelling, it's an art form. It's something that's part of us as human beings. Our whole society is based on stories. Everything from the law to the way that we're entertained are all stories that we adhere to. But the thing about storytelling is it breeds trust. And trust is also currency. So when you look at time and you look at trust, those are the things you're trying to get from a consumer. When you put it in relevant terms, you think of Disney. So for 17 years I worked for Disney. I had headed up global retail development. So we built all of the retail stores worldwide. But the other part of my team were the product developers, the ones that actually created the things that we sold. And what we were tasked with was taking this from the souvenir business to more of a lifestyle-driven business, and ultimately, of course, make more money. But the way to do that wasn't through designing better products. It was designing things that were intangible, that people could photograph and have Instagram moments for. So when you think of the Bippity Boppity Boutique, which was an idea that we came up with that we thought would be about a $39 price point, turned out to be a $200 price point with a 6-month waiting list, and we ended up building, I think, 9 or 10 of these during the course of my tenure there. It was an example of not the product, but the experience, and of course that's all we're talking about these past 2 days. But that experience, that memory, that sense of belonging, that thing that's wrapped up in the analysis, which is this price worth this dress and a little bit of makeup? No, not logically. From the heart, from the fact that I can take pictures and post them and actually get people to support me and affirm that that was a good decision, yes, absolutely. Customization and personalization are key to what the future consumer wants. And whether it's a Bippity Boppity Boutique or clothing that is sized just for you and printed with a dye sublimation printer in any pattern you want, the reality is the more customized a product or the more responsive a retailer is to personalization, the more successful they're going to be. We took this to the extreme. We used 3D printers and we created a scanning system that could print out you on a stormtrooper's body or embedded in carbonite. All there was as a result of this personalization and customization. And you know, for a $99 price point, that is more than a souvenir. That's something you're buying that's a memory. What we did was transform the idea of a souvenir business into a lifestyle business. And that really is what a consumer wants right now, is a lifestyle-driven business. But they want satisfaction on demand. Now, we call it critical mass for retail, because this dream we have of being able to sit at home and punch a button and print out something and you don't have to go to the store to buy it. This is not reality. You know what the purpose of 3D modeling and printing is, and it's speed and it's efficiency and it's lowering cost, but we're never in our lifetimes going to see this Jetson scenario where everything we want we can print at home to the quality that we demand. And that's another thing, because parallel with spending habits, there is this increased demand for design intelligence that the consumer just won't tolerate anymore. So the idea that something is shoddily designed or poorly put together is not going to succeed. So that intelligence has to be built into these things. You can look at a great case study when Apple announced the new iPhone, or the iWatch. And this was huge, because this is what every consumer was waiting for. Not necessarily the newest technology, not necessarily the new phone. Nobody wants a phone. You don't want to carry around something that you have to charge and worry about and lose. And the fact that Apple can design this marvelous piece of industrial engineering, the iPhone, and the first thing you do when you get it is put it in some indestructible case that covers it all up, because if you drop it, it will shatter. It is a fragile little item. It goes against everything that we think is kind of this integration of technology. But Apple said, look, this is it. We're going to create this beautiful thing. You're not going to need your phone. We're going to have a hologram on top, and you'll be able to have FaceTime in the air. Then it changed to this beautifully designed bangle. And this thing was going to be seamless. It was going to be unisex. It worked off of actual bioelectricity. But the point, what they were trying to do was create this bridge that the consumer is looking for, and that is transparent technology. Because no one wants to carry around and look at their phone. I mean, it is actually a change in our culture that's so odd that if, Apple came out tomorrow and said, we're going to sell a device that you set on your nightstand and that way you can read your emails while you sleep, the world would go crazy. They'd buy that thing in a minute. Okay, that type of insanity is what's driving this development of technology. What did Apple end up coming out with? Well, they came out with just a phone that you strap to your wrist. Didn't even work without the phone. The idea that consumers are so wanting to have this newest seamless technology that they're willing to spend and try anything was an experiment that Google had a great deal of success and failure, and you're all familiar with it, because Google Glass was an idea. And the idea was, what if we could give a consumer a level of transparency and technology as an overlay that no one else could see? Would they find that interesting? Well, of course they'd find it interesting. The technology behind it, was a little crude, because basically you have a little TV set strapped to your eyeball. But the idea of it was brilliant. The idea was, you're going to be able to see things that no one else can see, exactly what you want. You can play games, you can get information, you can talk to people, you can get the news. It's going to be the best thing in the world. Well, no, the world is not putting up with that. Because if you're wearing something on your face and I don't know what you're watching, I'm always going to be suspicious of what you're doing. It's got to be transparent. It's got to be seamless. And this idea that we could live in this world where the touch screen and augmented reality is going to be the way that we shop is a brilliant idea. It's not going to happen in the next 10 years because this ridiculous idea of wearing something on you, which was going to be an integral part of your experience and the way that you viewed the world, is scary because people really lusted after that. We couldn't deliver. No one can deliver on the technology. But the idea that the world is rebelling against that being an obvious thing is really important because it's going to influence the way that consumers spend and why they spend. And, if you don't remember, the idea of early adopters is hilarious when you look at like the first cordless headset for the iPhone. You think, all right, this is what people were using to talk hands-free. It's strapped to your head. But it's no more ridiculous than, the GPS clamp that apparently clamped to your steering wheel, even if you're driving on a cliff. I mean, this is a ridiculous idea, but all of these things are propagated by the fact that we don't know how to use this technology yet, and we don't know how to monetize it into a retail experience. But back to technology. When you look at where we are right now, we are almost at the point where we can emulate a human brain in terms of processing power. And right now, technology can only spin an electron so fast I mean, we've maxed out in terms of inventing and the idea that a new technology will just pop up. It's going to be about quantum computing. It's going to be about things that we haven't invented yet or are in the process of inventing. But again, in this very, very short time frame compared to how long we have existed as a species, the impact of this technology is creating all of these changes in spending habit that are be driven by, this available technology. This is not future speak anymore. This is what's out there. Facial recognition, synthetic biology, device convergence. And again, device convergence you'll continue to see. Smaller, better, cheaper, faster, until it's invisible. And ultimately, that's the goal. This Internet of Things, this thing that's influencing consumer behavior, is creating things that you wouldn't really imagine. Tactiloo is a bracelet that you put on, and you give one to your significant other, and wherever they are in the world, if you pinch it, squeeze it, poke it, they feel that on their wrists. That's creepy to me. It's not so creepy to my kids, but again, there's a lot of difference between what they grew up with and what I grew up with. I grew up in the 70s and 80s when I went to the School of Architecture. We didn't have, the PC wasn't invented yet. We drew. And we imagined, and we pontificated, and we reflected. And now, kids in school today, it's all about the PC, and look how fast I can do a rendering, and SketchUp just does it for me. We're losing something in this process of technology being a replacement for education or creativity. But when you look at what Intel has done, their whole Medusa PC now fits on a chip the size of a quarter. That's a fully functional PC without a screen. This Internet of Things, or this reduction in size of available technologies, is creating new markets, but also goods like Toto's latest toilet, which is Wi-Fi enabled. And when you use the bathroom, it analyzes your waste and sends it to your doctor, sends the notes to your doctor, goes through everything and tells you if this, this is Toto's web-enabled toilet. It's just a smaller step up from like the smart body analyzers, which aren't just fat content, but can tell you a wealth of information. And these things are all networked through the Internet of Things to either your device or your doctor's device. Even in its most rudimentary form, this dash button from Amazon is a great idea. I mean, you have technology that you have to deal with now. So you take a dash button, wherever you keep your Maxwell House coffee, you stick the button. When you're out, you press the button. It arrives on your doorstep the next day. They removed all of that transaction, even though our tolerance for transactions has gotten so incredibly short, it's almost embarrassing. If we have to wait, for 3 seconds for something, it becomes an annoyance. With Amazon, and you think of like Amazon Go stores, great idea. It's not a great retail experience. What an Amazon Go store is speed. Again, that thing, speed, getting in, getting out, a transactionless experience. Something we've all been dealing with in theme park design, which is how do you create this truly transactionless experience? Anyway, things like this, hue, which is the ability to control your lighting and lighting temperature and color from your device. These have been around a while. My oldest daughter was a huge fan of. This is the Mimo kimono. So when she had her first child, my first granddaughter, she said, "Dad, this is the best thing in the world. I don't have to worry about sudden infant death syndrome. I know exactly how much she's sleeping, if she rolls over, if there's any problem in the night, I'm alerted. I don't know how you ever lived without this." And I said, "Well, honey, there's a lot of low-tech solutions to a problem, okay? You have to use creativity. You can't depend on technology to solve your world's problems." My granddaughter told me a joke the other day, and she said, "Do you know why Sweden is painting UPC codes on the sides of their battleships?" And I said, "No, Sophie." I actually believed her. That's how gullible I am. I said, "No, Sophie, I don't. Why?" And she said, "Well, that's so they can Scandinavian." My first thought was, okay, that's a pretty good joke. My second thought was, how does this 4-year-old even understand how that's funny? Okay, because she obviously knows what a UPC code is. She knows what scanning is. It's a level of intelligence that's being bred into our children now that we don't know how to manage yet. All right, there's a mistake slide after here, so we'll skip that. Now back to Google Glass. So Google Glass was trying to do something that everyone has been trying to do in terms of the consumer market, and that's create this transparent technology. Now we can't do it with the technology we have now, with the processes we have now, but it will happen, and it will happen in our lifetime. The two things that are dependent on this happening are creating a superconductor that can work at room temperature, which every company in the world is trying to solve for. I think it's a math problem. I don't think it's a physics problem. But that and solving for quantum mechanics with this idea of the entanglement of qubits, which are the little switches that make a computer work. Everyone's working on these two things because when that happens, this is the next singularity for us as humans. And that is your technology now vanishes. It just disappears because it becomes so small that it's put under your skin, it's put under your nail, it's worn as a ring. It becomes something that just works. And how does it work? It works with the patent that Google's already applied for. And that is a contact lens that has an embedded video screen in it that actually enables you to interact with the world to see what you want to see or what you don't want to see or get any information at all. Now, this is kind of key to what we're talking about today. Because when you think about the why do we design physical things. We design spaces and environments and stories and things that engage people and they're influenced by. But when you have the ability privately to yourself to put an augmented reality overlay on anything you're walking through or any experience that you want, isn't that what we design? That suspension of disbelief? If it's available through contact lens, now think contact lens, binocular vision, 3 dimensions. Now you can go and you can see something you like and you can move your hand and find out where it's from and how much it costs or where I can order it. Or I don't like the color blue, I want to change that building to yellow because it's my favorite color and it makes me happy. We will see this in our lifetime as soon as we can solve for the physics. When you look at what's being done, and of course this group's so familiar with texture mapping, but in South Korea for women with beauty products, they want to create beauty balms and things that the world hasn't seen yet, but the ability to see what that makeup looks like on you before you buy it is something that they're used to as a shopper. It's not the US shopper, but definitely a South Korean shopper. Technologies like this, when you think of materials like graphene, which was billed as kind of a wonder material a couple of years ago, graphene can be produced in boatloads now. We just haven't figured out what to do with it. It's clear, it's super strong, it conducts electricity. The idea that everything, our TVs, our devices, everything would be made from graphene probably isn't going to happen as soon as they thought it would. But this kind of crude integration of technology in retail is something that a lot of people are succeeding at. Tesco is a great example in South Korea. Again, a grocery store company that didn't have any real estate. They couldn't build any more. The city, Seoul, was so landlocked. So they created an experience where people congregate, like a subway. You virtual shop with your phone. You get on the subway. By the time you walk home, that box of groceries is on your doorstep. Creating an environment without an environment. Something we've all been challenged to do on occasion. But it's changing the way that people look at retail. So when you look at engagement now, or through storytelling and the new social currency. The new social currency is this affirmation. It's this idea that I may not like it, but you like it, so now I want to be liked. This is really interesting when you look at what's changed in terms of how people perceive companies, all of our companies, any retailer. And in the past, up to about 3 years ago, I would say, these are the words that were being used when you sat through one of those painful sessions at work where we're going to write our mission and vision statement. You ever had to do that? Oh, it's like horrible. But a brand, who you are, is defined by a what, a point or difference, a market driver, competitive, employees, consumers. You have a contract with a consumer. You talk in terms of ads and next quarters. Okay, this is all boardroom speak that now the world is not putting up with, because through technology and through communication, what this is changing to is a stand and a whole different way to use this language. You don't have a what, you have a why. You don't have a point of difference, you have a point of view. And you're not a market driver, you methodically dream. Your employees are not employees, they're missionaries for what you believe in. You don't have consumers, you have advocates. And an advocate for a brand is your most powerful tool, because they will be your best advertising. And conversely, if they have a bad experience, you know what that story is. When you look at companies that are embracing this, actually succeeding at it, Lululemon is a great example. I don't know how many women who buy Lululemon clothing actually go to yoga. I think it's a small amount, but the idea that I'm wearing something that is used in a professional manner for yoga, or it's comfortable, or I like it because it's athleisure, and everything I read on Twitter says athleisure is the new cool, so I'm going to go buy this stuff. Okay, that's what's causing people to buy things. But Lululemon looks at themselves not as a retailer, but as something that consumers believe in. Even their retail stores they use as places of congregation and meeting. Oh yeah, you can buy something there, and believe me, they sell a lot. But that's not the intent. The intent is we're a family. And when you can take that stand and say you're part of our family, you're not a consumer we deal with or someone we sell to, you're someone I have a relationship with, that's what a consumer is looking for now. When you tie that into cool hunting, or the idea that what I just bought no one else likes, this is a horror. And of course, the younger you are, the more horrific this is, because no one wants to be considered not part of the in crowd or the hip crowd, especially in youth, when that is so important. And that peer pressure is being driven by access to the entire world. I can't imagine living life as a teenager today and now. It would be almost unbearable. What the idea of cool hunting and tapping into this is doing is creating these pockets of what's called American prestige. And American prestige is prestige for the masses. So you think of Versace teaming up with H&M, that has probably the least expensive clothing I've ever seen. It's a big deal. And something like this, not only for a marketing pop, but the fact that they will sell out every piece an hour after the store opens, tells you how much this is driving that behavior. When we think of, the new Souvenir and this culture of what folks are calling cool hunting, there are attributes that are driving spending behavior. And if we had a lot of time today, I'd go through each of them, but I do want to touch on a few. There's 20. The last two are the most important. But empowered consumerism is something you live every day because you are a consumer. And you know that you are basically in control now, not the retailer. Doesn't matter what type of retailer. If it's a themed shop at the end of an attraction, or if it's the biggest big box retailer, it always comes down to the power that a consumer has. We touched briefly on presumers and owners is a new term. Authenticity, made in America, crowd-shaped, data mining, which is something that not everyone's comfortable with, either through ignorance of the fact that no one really knows what big data is being used for. There's a high sense of discomfort with how much personal information this retailer or brand that you have an affinity towards is collecting, and what are they doing with it? Full frontal, full transparency. Oh my God, they're going through Washington right now with this, the idea that there is nothing to hide anymore. And if it can be found, it'll be found. But this idea of inequality in the world, or the fact that there's inequity amongst sexes or races in a world that continues to shrink, is going to change very, very fast. The world is becoming much less tolerant of that, even though it's a slow process. Demanding brands, guilt-free status, eco-innovation by China, which was a surprise to everyone, and products that have multiple lives, different purposes, not disposable. Emerging markets, Celebration Nation, holistic health and wellness, psychiatry, apscriptions, and the Internet of Caring Things. These are all kind of tied into the fact that our healthcare and the way that we live our lives, especially with lives living or longevity being so much longer now, the idea that you can now monitor your own health and correct problems is a big market. It's actually one of the biggest emerging markets there are. But the big two, mobile moments. Right? This is what I do, it's what you do, it's what everyone does. Any free moment you have, maybe even right now, you're looking at your phone and you're reading something. You're following up on email. You're reading the news. You're seeing what your friends are doing. Okay, that is getting worse. And as technology gets faster, it's going to get to the point where when we reach that singularity of the contact lens, then suddenly we don't need to communicate with each other at all. And it's almost like that now. And again, I don't think of myself as an old man, but when I go to a restaurant and I see a family of 7, this was last night, and every one of them is around the table on their device, from the smallest to the oldest, I just think it's wrong, and I'm not really comfortable with that. But the idea that when I was a kid and I dreamed of having a real Star Trek tricoder that could tell me stuff, we all have that tricoder now. We just don't know what to use it for. That's the crazy thing. So mobile moments, again, finding every nook and cranny, not using imagination, not reflecting on something or creating something in your head or pretending. No, eyes glued to the screen, finding out things that really aren't that important at the end of the day. That's a big one that's impacting society. The way that retailers are trying to address that is if they know you've got your phone in your hand all the time, they're going to try and tap you with ideas or offers or snag your attention to buy this or come into here because it's proximity based. So this is just one thing that will be changing over the next few years. The one that we briefly talked about was the technology candy store. Right? We live in the most exciting times in the history of humanity. And this technology that we live every day, as it becomes more embedded in how we live our lives, when we do get to that next singularity, and again, quantum computing is a real thing right now. They're expensive. There's only a few of them. It's basically 6 tons of cooling equipment to chill a postage-size stamp processing chip to as near absolute zero as we can get it for it to work properly. Quantum computing is science fiction made real. Quantum computing uses qubits instead of bits. A bit in a traditional computer is on or off. It's a switch, A or B, on or off, 0, 1. In a quantum computer, a qubit is 1 and 0 at the same time in parallel dimensions. The only thing that they haven't solved for in quantum computing, besides the superconductor, is the fact that the qubits have to be in a sense of entanglement for them to work properly. The theory is, in a working quantum computer, it gives you every answer to every question essentially before you ask it. I know it's weird, but that's the scary thing about that happening. If we get accessible quantum computing in the world we live in now, where we have the capability to create beautiful things and equally destroy, that is what the world is worried about. But again, back to what we were talking about, even without that next singularity, with the technology we have right now, this feeling of significance and this sense of belonging is the predominant emotion that drives all spending behavior. And again, those three things that every consumer wants, that information, validation, and affirmation. When we think of what we're designing or why we're designing it, those are the three things that should be at top of mind, not necessarily price or value or complexity. I want to leave you with one thing, and these are just things to keep top of mind. So when we're designing, it's called steps, but these simple things, social currency, think of as something as valuable as money, because it is. Triggers, either social triggers or visual triggers, but top of mind is tip of tongue. Creating emotion, which we have talked about for the past 2 days. Making things public, giving them practical value. And again, the stories, the things that have carried us from when we evolved to where we are now. Our whole lives are based on stories. Stories translated into tangible memories create goods. In our environment, in a theme park environment, those tangible memories are a key piece of buying something to commemorate an event, but that's slowly transitioning to just a photo or a post, and that's what's driving the world crazy right now is how do they deal with it. Most retailers don't know how to deal with it, which is why you see big box retailers continue to shrink, to close stores, to go away. That's not how people shop anymore. Okay, so I am right out of time, but I think we have Q&A too, right? You good? Yeah? So does anyone have any questions? Yes, sir. I can't see all through these lights, but.
Better? Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I produce augmented reality experiences, so a lot of what you're saying is kind of in line with the work that I do, and we've got HoloLens, we have the ODG, we have the Magic Leap, so we have all these people trying to make glasses-sized computers and that kind of like optical spatial computing. But what's interesting is that we sometimes also see a shift where people just want to turn all of that off. So as deep as we're going on one extreme, trying to bring it all to your glasses, it seems that we also have a group of people who want to go on the opposite extreme and just turn stuff off.
Oh, without a doubt.
Like Apple's introduction of screen time that tells you how much time you're wasting on Facebook every week. You know, like, what's your opinion on
oh my God. Kind of so yeah, it's exactly what we've been talking about, which is now, because this acceleration has happened so fast, and it's so embedded in the way that we educate and are entertained, and this desire or this expectation that every bit of technology is accessible to us immediately. It's really kind of silly. So what now parents especially are realizing that I have to stop this madness somehow. When my children's behavior or the way that their brain actually functions, their development as a unique creative individual is being either hampered or modified somehow by what the rest of the world is telling them to do, that's the sense of urgency right now. And what other choice do we have? It's you can either have it or you can't. And have you ever seen a child with their iPad taken away? Oh my God, you would think the world was coming to an end. That's how dependent they are on it. So yes, you're gonna see a lot more of that. You're gonna see a lot of technology backlash as well. Plus, the one thing that our government, any government, is horrifically scared of is the fact that now we are so dependent on technology that becomes our greatest vulnerability, is hitting us in the technology belt. Any other?
Yes.
Yes.
Am I on? Joe,
Which
am
one?
I on? Yes, there I am.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi,
We'll
no,
come
it's
back.
okay. Thank you very much for a very insightful, informative presentation. Now, I know that none of us are going to ever be as smart as you are about what's happening right now, but do you have some current and contemporary books or information sources where some of us could catch up with some of the things you've taught us today?
Yeah, you know, I can, if you want to shoot me an email, I can send you a list of that. Yeah. And I think I had a lot of this posted on johnnyrush.com, but this may not be the most current one. Yes? So I can't hear you.
You were talking earlier about the stuff where you really aren't informed about purchasing something unless you read reviews beforehand. Like, I see ads all the time for those, like, for example, there we go. It's on now. You're starting off. So I see ads all the time, especially on my social media feeds for, as an example, mattresses. So Casper, Purple, whatever. Those are all sort of retailers that don't have any sort of presence. They're only on the internet and they're direct to consumer. So literally the only way that you can know about that is if you either read the reviews or you decide to hold your nose and take the chance and buy it. Like, is that where everything is going, where the culture is going to change to we're going to spend all the money first and remember to return it if we don't like it? Or is the whole idea of trying stuff like going away in terms of retail? Or?
Yeah, it's going away. It'll never disappear completely, but there's car sites now where you buy a car on the internet, they bring it to your house. I mean, you can return it if you don't want it, but the idea that you didn't kick the tires and drive it around isn't that big a deal. Why? Because dependability within varying degrees has become somewhat homogeneous. But to answer your question, let's say it's a Casper mattress company. Most consumers now depend on what other people say before they'll give their opinion. So when you sort by Amazon reviews, I mean, how many of you have wanted to buy something and then you say, well, let me look at the reviews, and it's like, oh, I've changed my mind. There's a lot of problems. And I mean, some of the people that review are fanatical reviewers. I want them like in the judicial system. They go through every bell and whistle and tell you the pluses and minuses, and at the end of the day, I will totally make a decision on a $1,000 item based on what someone else said. That is going to be the world we live in, because remember, information, validation, and affirmation, and everything you described are those two things. You've heard about Casper mattresses, and you all know someone that says, oh my God, it came in a little box, and I unrolled it, and it's the most comfortable mattress I've ever slept in. For most people, that's all they need to know, because they don't have to go to a mattress store, which are, well, you know what mattress stores are. There's a reason there's so many of them. It's because you're getting robbed in a mattress store. You can buy a reasonable mattress. I hope no one works for a mattress company. My God, that would be awful. But yes, totally. That's the world we live in now. So, any more? Yes?
Over here, where does one locate that beautiful transit map infographic you had at the beginning of your presentation?
Public domain. Trends in technology timeline. Things
Just
put.
that?
Yep.
All right.
Put together. They put out one every year. I think it's done by a Cornell and Harvard collaboration. But it's fun to read because this is not necessarily new. When you go through this and you see, all right, it was done. I think it was done in 2015. And you go through, is suddenly the things that were being projected as might happen now are happening, and those micro trends and those mega trends combine to form these directions in consumer behavior. And you can see on the legend on the right, it's all disciplines. It's not just retail. But yeah, give it a look. Okay. Oh, yes. You got to flip the switch on it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
There we go. Well, first of all, I did buy my car online. It was the strangest, most amazing experience ever. It took 5 minutes. I didn't have to spend 4.5 hours in a car dealership.
Yeah. Did you haggle over undercoating?
No.
No.
I have two questions. The first one is, do you have any suggestions or recommendations for how not to fall into that technology obsessiveness that inevitably we all are addicted to our phones. Are there any tricks or tips for maybe, I don't think the current generation, I think we're at a loss already, but maybe the future generation. My second question, I'm always really interested in the uncanny valley, and especially with technology now. We heard from a speaker yesterday that there was a hotel that was operated by robots. I know that Marriott has a hotel that the baggage boys are all robots now, and they automate and drive your luggage up to your room. So I'm wondering if you can touch on that a little bit as well.
Yeah, I think, in the strange time we live in, it's all dependent on what level of integration technology was included in your development. So like you said, kids, it's a lost cause. The iPad is the new babysitter, and it makes my heart cry. Because when I see a kid in a stroller with an iPad doing this, my little nephew, they give him all the junk stuff, the hand-me-downs. So his big brother gets a device, and his sister. By the time he gets it, the screen's broken. His fingers are all cut up. He will cut himself to play these crazy games. Yeah, for children, I don't have the answer. Okay, it's insanity, and just managing my 14-year-old is a challenge. My second daughter's 25, my oldest is 30. The 14-year-old, her level of influence and her demeanor is totally based on her acceptance and her ranking in her social media circles. This whole bullying craze, the school shootings, everything that you see based on having this ability to have information, but also the idea that if I can get onto that glowing bandwagon of being on postings, that there's some value. I don't believe that. I don't believe that at the age I'm in. I think it's tragic when I don't see kids with coloring books and drawing and building things. I see them playing Fortnite. Okay, I don't want to insult anyone in here who's a Fortnite fan, but those people would rather be in that game than in the real world. And you have to pull them out of it. So I don't have a really good answer for you other than society is trying to deal with that right now. And I know the subject of today was retail, but the things that people are buying now, or the things they covet, which is what you want a consumer to do, is covet something. The things they covet are based on what other people think and say, not necessarily their own opinion. So, okay, well, sorry.
Testing, test. Yes, it works.
You're good.
Okay, so my nephew, I took him to the mall, recently learned how to walk. Walked up to the advertisements, static advertisements,
yeah.
swiping.
Try to swipe it, right?
Swipe it. That kind of blew my mind. Okay, my question was, if you were a magic 8-ball, and I shook you, and I said, is the future bright? What would you say?
I said no. Personally, I'd say no.
And if I shook you again?
Then I'd say yes. Then I'd say, ask me again later.
All right.
Now, it depends on what you're talking about. Okay, well, I mean, I do not want to get political by any means. But we live in crazy times right now. And when you think of what through a keystroke, the ability to decimate another country is very, very fragile. Right now it is. It will be in the future. It'll get worse as that technology gets faster and cheaper and AI becomes more proficient. So yes, it's my belief in us as humans. Of course it's optimistic. I think we're wonderful creatures. But our ability to use that technology in a wrong way is very realistic. So you know what? I'll change. I won't say it's not bright. I'll say it's foggy. Would you guys agree with that? Yeah. Okay. Any more questions? Thank you for your time.